Hello Internet, and welcome to my much belated first episode review for Steins Gate 0, episode 20. I mentioned back in my very first Manga of the Month video for June 2018 that I would be doing this and my hero, and I kind of got behind on that. But here I am for the last 4 episodes, and right on time for Zero to finally get its shit together. I've definitely felt like, for a good chunk of the series so far, pretty much for a lot of what happened after that one random Alpha World Line episode, has been kind of just spinning its gears, I guess. In a lot of ways, it didn't really work. But it definitely seems like with this episode, we're really getting back into gear, getting some great fucking storytelling out of Steins Gate 0. So let's jump right on in. When we last left off, Okabe had decided to use the time leap machine to save Suzu and Mayuri, who had seemingly died in the attack by Leskinen, who is definitely not the best of villains, let's be honest here. But their bodies were not found in the wreckage. That is an important note from last episode. But yeah. And so Okabe time leaped at one point at the very end of the episode, and that's where we cut off last week. But it kind of had disastrous results. But before we get into there, the kind of sequence that plays over the opening credits is really weird. I don't know how to take of it. There's a lot of, him with every single person that's really interacted with the Future Gadget Lab, including Maho and Kurisu at the same time, which leads to a lot of questions as to what that's supposed to be about. Is it like his perfect world where he's friends with everyone and they're all hanging out, making memories? Because an important thing to note about that opening sequence is that he is in his white lab coat, which is definitely a sign of better days, as opposed to the black button-up shirt he wears in Zero. So that might just be his dreams for the future, or his perfect world, which, honestly, for being honest, is kind of a letdown. It doesn't really mean all that much, because we kind of knew that, like, Okabe liked being with Maho and liked being with Kurisu. But anyway, Okabe wakes up into a destroyed Akiba. And all of a sudden, this episode is finally getting into the good shit. I was super hyped. Once we kind of realized what's going on, I was like, oh shit, this is where it gets good. And so, at first it's not quite clear how Okabe time moved into the future. We eventually find out that somehow, and this was kind of counterintuitive to the way time leaps work, is that they had salvaged the time leap machine, and so when Okabe tried to time leap at the end of last episode, it failed, and he kept on living his life up to 2025, where he was captured by Stratfor and tortured into a coma. And then Daru rescued him, told Suzu he was dead. That leads to a huge thing I'm going to talk about later that the episode doesn't quite go into detail with, but definitely is going to explain how all of this ties back into the original Steins Gate, I feel. Tells Suzu he's dead, and then keeps him tucked away in what looks like the ruins of the Gadget Lab, or maybe the ruins of Brown's store. I'm not sure. The CRT place. But anyway, then Daru had just digged up the original time leap machine and implants 2011's Okabe's memories, which had been recorded by the time leap machine, into 2036 Okabe, which leaves me with some questions, because the time leap machine is supposed to only work 48 hours. Because, that's how, after 48 hours, the brain has become too different to the brain that was recorded to really reconcile the differences. Maybe that'll be explained, maybe it'll just be a plot hole, but you know what, the rest of the episode is good enough that, honestly, I'm not too complaining. But anyway, way before we get that, the next couple, minutes of the episode is just Okabe wandering through the destroyed 2036 Akiba and realizing, what the fuck he's woken up into. And it's a great thing to see. It's honestly, that kind of Okabe, I feel like for too long in Zero, Okabe was kind of putting off the fact that he had, condemned the world to destruction. And this sequence was a great way to, open his eyes, yeah, shit. This is what happened because of Okabe's abandoning everything. And it's the kind of shit Zero honestly should have done eons ago. Everything about waking Okabe up, that's really been going on since episode 16, should have been, like weeks before this. But anyway, as Okabe is walking through the destroyed Akiba, he gets found by some kind of military goons. Honestly, the idea of like the peacekeepers that Suzu mentioned way back when in the beta world line has always been kind of weird for me, because like it made sense in the alpha world line where CERN had like power over the world, but in the beta world line I was always under the impression that it was like such a war-torn hellscape that there was no real power. We see like Yuki dies from like a drone strike, which like there are people warring a drone could happen. But there's a big difference between a drone strike and this super powerful military force that we see every now and then in the beta world line. It just kind of leaves me with some questions that the show has not really answered. But you know what? I've accepted that that's kind of weird as far as the beta world line is concerned. But yeah, that whole sequence is great. Then Suzu shows up, super confused because again, Daru told her that Okabe is dead. But takes him to Daru. First, we don't actually know that, or it's not actually said that she's taking him to Daru, but we all know it's Daru. And the password to get in, I forget what the password is exactly, but it's based on the Moe Moe Kyun line he had with Yuki back in episode 14, and that was so cute. Like, even though everything was dying, my heart, like, warmed right there. And then Okabe and Suzu enter into the base for Valkyries. We find out the organization is called. And something important, or something not really important, something I kind of noticed throughout the episode, future Daru refers to Okabe at one point, like, as he introduces himself, he calls Okabe a noob. And it's kind of something that I notice again when Ferris shows up later on, is that these characters don't seem to have really changed in 25 years. Daru, I get Daru still saying noob. It's a minor enough thing that, like, it might just be a quirk. He grew up in, 2010 internet culture where noob was very much a thing, and as culture kind of disintegrated in the wake of World War III, noob kind of sticks around in his lingo because there is no culture to really get rid of noob. But with Ferris is still saying meow all the time. Like, she has not grown up in 25 years. And maybe it's some kind of, like, coping mechanism to deal with the horrors of war. But if it is, I'd like to see that. And that's kind of something that makes me really frustrated at how long it took Zero to get this far, is that we don't have time to see how Ferris has really been broken by this war and why she's still using her little quirks like that. Which, admittedly, is kind of a minor issue. But you know what? It's just something that would have been nice to see rather than the gang kind of hangs out and goes shopping every episode. While the main plot's kind of stuffed into the background. But it's around this time. So essentially, another thing I kind of been having a gripe with Zero about. This video is very quickly turning into a list of all of my gripes with Zero that I did not get the chance to bring up while they were happening. But Zero was kind of advertised the story of how Okabe gets to the point where he sends the video message back to Okabe at the end of episode 23 of the original series that motivates Okabe to go back one last time to try to save Kurisu, gives him the idea to use the little red gel thing, which admittedly does not work, but, we all know how that plays out at this point. And so I finally realized this was how they did it. A 25-year time skip. Like, alright, it works. It works. Based on the time leap shenanigans, it works. But yeah, this is how we get there. And so when Okabe, I just realized that Okabe did not actually die in this timeline, my initial thoughts were that this was not the same as those world lines where Okabe dies in 2025, that we've been told over and over again. Okabe dies in 2025, dies in 2025. Okabe is dead in 2025. But then we find out, and this is the thing I was going to bring up earlier, is that Daru had told Suzu that Okabe died in 2025. He lied to Suzu. And so, that means that the convergence point of the beta world line was not Okabe dies in 2025. It was that Suzu believes Okabe has died in 2025. Which is very, very similar to how Steins Gate Okabe saves Kurisu. because he realizes that the beta world line convergence point is not that Makise Kurisu dies in July 2010, but that Okabe believes Kurisu dies in 2010, which means I think there's been the whole what's the point? What point does Okabe have to get to send the message back to his past self? And this is that point. He needs to realize that convergence points are not as simple as he believes. That they're wrapped up in belief and not actual happenings. And that blew my mind as I realized that. And, like, honestly, I feel like these 4 episodes are going to be, like, the highlight of the series, which, let's be honest, Zero kind of needs. Besides episode 8, which is already the highlight of the series. But yeah. So anyway, at that point, we finally meet up with Ruka and Ferris years later. And Ruka became a full-on swordsman. Like, he's a fucking badass now. We know, like Okabe had been training Ruka in the ways of the sword way back in 2010. But, like, that was always kind of a joke, and I didn't think Ruka was actually learning sword skills, and, like, maybe he wasn't, but he certainly learned them now. He, like, lays waste to, all the goons who are, like, trying to trap them from some unnamed organization, maybe Stratfor, maybe the German guy, maybe not the Germans, the Russians, maybe some other country, I don't know. Also, speaking of other countries, going back to Daru's explanation of the past 25 years, it kind of boggles my mind that Valkyrie never joined up with a country. Like, normally, Daru says all the countries were trying to kill us. When, more realistically, it seems like all the countries would be trying to get Valkyrie to join them, So, again, Zero's timeline is kind of confusing at this point, and I've kind of accepted it as just kind of weird. But, whatever. I've accepted that at this point. And then, they kill off Ruka. Okabe shows up, and Ruka has killed all the soldiers, and he goes over to Ruka, and Ruka's, like, covered in, like, bullet wounds down here. And there aren't any working time machines in this world line, and Ruka's dead. And, like, I love Ruka. Ruka's such an interesting character, such an underutilized character. I was honestly kind of pissed off that even 25 years later, Ruka was still kind of dealing with, like, feeling like he wasn't really a member of the Future Gadget Lab. Like, he brought up with Suzu way back earlier on in the series that, he wants to be included, and this Okabe leaving him out really pissed him off, or really made him uncomfortable. And that was a really nice, character choice, that, he wanted to become a real member of the group, even if Okabe was like, no, Ruka has to stay pure. But, both, the series seemed to be kind of condemning Okabe's decisions, both with Ruka and with Mayuri in the past few episodes, to leave them as these, like, beacons of innocence, so that when he needs them, he can go back to them. And, finally establishing personhood. But it seemed like Valkyrie still kept doing that with Ruka. Ruka still saw himself as excluded from the rest of the group, and that kind of, sure, Okabe was around for 14 of those years. I feel like he definitely played a part in that. But even for the 11 years after Okabe's supposed death, the group, I guess maybe Ruka saw Daru sticking him off to watch over Okabe for a decade as that kind of exclusion. But I really wish Ruka got that kind of inclusion into the group, even if it was, like, off screen. Like, we saw Ruka as a full-fledged member of the Future Gadget Lab. Even if Okabe always saw Ruka as a Gadget Lab member. But after that, they all go back to the Valkyrie base to kind of, like, cope with the loss of Ruka. And Maho shows up, who was not aged a day. But they have this, like, nice conversation on how, like, Maho asks Okabe if he thinks that everyone is, like, just a super cold, heartless bitch, because they aren't, mourning Ruka's loss. And I like Maho's explanation, like, yeah, we've just been through so much. that what's one more death. That was kind of this heartbreaking thing from Mojo, and I loved it. That was such a great moment. And then Okabe reveals he wants to use the time leap machine again, because Daru was like, salvage the time leap machine, and we know it's working now because it brought Okabe back to life. But I'm kind of curious why what the specific reason he wants to use it for. You know, does he want to go all the way back to 2011? Because I mean, I imagine at this point his mind is still fresh enough that he could go back to 2011 and save everything again. I hope not, because that would just be, we finally like brought some light back into the story by going to 2036 and going back and dealing with, you know, Leskinen, the stereotypical villain, is just not as fun as dealing with, you know, the horrible future that they're in now. So hopefully it's just to like save Ruka. That would honestly be better in my opinion. Even because then you have to deal with the fact that like the older Valkyrie members who have like lived through hell are like, what the fuck is one person? With that logic, why don't we save everyone? Okabe just wants to save Ruka. I feel like that would be a much better conflict than, oh, Okabe goes back to 2011 to stop everything. Especially because we know Okabe has to, by the end of everything, you know, be in the future to send the letter back to Okabe. Back to Steins Gate Okabe. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Steins Gate 0. It's getting good again. It's recovered from the, let's be honest, Leskinen is a cheesy villain. He's a cheesy villain in the way that the original Steins Gate never really was. You know, he's just evil almost for evil's sake. In a way that Steins Gate tended to keep its villains away from being. You know, with Moeka and Tennoji, they were both very human. You almost sympathize with them. Leskinen is just like, he almost seemed like he should be a foil for Okabe, but like, I feel like it doesn't quite work like that. I don't know. I have very, very vague negative thoughts about Leskinen, and I don't dig him. I don't at all. First of all, it was obvious he was the villain from like episode 1, and the series thought it was being way too smart with that reveal, but like, it was super obvious. But anyway, hopefully Okabe will decide to stay in 2036 and fight, which will lead him to send the D-mail back to his past self. That's really the route I'm hoping for. I'm not trying to go back and save everyone, because for one thing, we know he fails to save everyone. That's the whole point of the series. The entire series has been leading to Okabe's failure, and his last-ditch effort of sending a D-mail back to 2010. So if the series tries to go back to the past or the present or whatever, I'll be really disappointed. But at least we'll always have this episode. I don't know. So I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed this episode and the video. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe or whatever the fuck you want. I don't really care. And as always, people, keep kicking ass, and I'll see you in the future. Bye.